Hello my friends, it is time to wrap up the month of July. July felt like the longest month ever. I don't know why, but at the same time it like flew by. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like that's been the whole summer so far. It's like flying by, but also going really slow. Anyway, in the month of July, I read a total of 18 books for a total of 7,158 pages. I went on a mini binge this month, which you'll hear about in a second. But I thought to make wrap-ups more fun for me personally, I'm just gonna start wrapping up the board game itself in here. So we're gonna go roll by roll for July and whether I got to those books or not. And instead of explaining it, let's just get into it because I feel like I talk too much. Anyway, the first roll that we got for the month of July was to read a short story collection or anthology. And I was gonna read this for that. I completely forgot about it, honestly. I read one story and then put it down and forgot it existed. So I do want to roll this over into August, and if I can finish it in August, then I will get the book token for it still. And if I don't finish it in August, then I don't get the book token and it has to go back into the game. The first story was okay, but I'm excited to continue on and see how the rest of these go. Then we had Isolated Setting, and originally I was supposed to read The Last Graduate for this prompt by Naomi Novik. This is the second book in the Scholomance series. I wanted to get through the whole trilogy this month, so I did reread A Deadly Education and then picked up The Last Graduate. And listen, we might as well talk about this one now too. An interesting experience. The first time I read this, I absolutely loved it. I knew it had its flaws, and despite its flaws, I was obsessed with it. I gave it 5 stars. It was one of my favorite books the year I read it, and I had such a fond memory feeling towards this book. When I reread it, the reread experience was a lot different. Well, not a lot different. The things that I enjoyed about it the first time, I still enjoyed about it the second time around. The things that were not great, the flaws that I read the first time that I easily brushed over, I didn't as easily brush them over this time around, which meant that this wasn't quite a 5-star for me this time. It was a 4-star, but a 4-star is still a great rating. I still really enjoy our main character Galadriel. If you don't know anything about this series, we're following our main character Galadriel, who is a junior at the Scholomance, and the Scholomance is this magical high school for magic kids. But the thing about this school is that it is out to get these kids, okay? There are monsters lurking around every corner waiting to devour students. There are no teachers, there are no adults. It is just these kids isolated in this school, unable to get out until they graduate. Our main character Galadriel has this prophecy that she is destined to become this evil, all-powerful enchantress. So the school is constantly giving her these big, huge spells that are like how to destroy an entire village or how to mind control people to do your will. And like, she's constantly fighting against those things and just trying to be a good person, but the school and all of the students around her are making it very difficult. That's the basic gist of this, and I really liked that a lot. But anyway, I read this, I gave it 4 stars, or reread this, gave it 4 stars, didn't love it as much as the first time, immediately moved on to the second book, and I got 90 pages in and had to DNF it. The writing style of this is what turned a lot of people off originally, and it turned me off the second time around and trying to get into the second book. It's this stream of consciousness, run-on sentences, lots of exposition, very little dialogue. And in the first book, I noticed it a lot more with my reread, and then by the time I got into the second book, I was like, I cannot do this. I cannot take this anymore. The writing is driving me crazy, which sucks because I kind of want to know what happens, but at the same time, I'm just not willing to sit through it to figure it out. So I DNF'd this. I am unfortunately DNFing the series. I'm probably going to unhaul both of these books, unfortunately, but I do have the special edition of A Deadly Education, so I'll have my special edition on the shelf as a memory, I guess. But yeah, I just did not want to continue with that. But anyway, since I didn't complete the Isolated Setting prompt, I chose another book to complete that with, and I chose The Fury by Alex Michaelides. This is his latest thriller. It was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. It came out in January and I didn't get to it. I don't know why I put it off for so long, but I did finally give it a read and I did really enjoy it. This is definitely an isolated setting because it takes place mostly on this Greek island with a bunch of friends, and because of a storm that rolls through, they cannot get off the island, so they're isolated there. This is a very interesting thriller. I think it's a lot different from his other two books. The first part of the synopsis, it says, "This is a tale of murder," or maybe that's not quite true. At its heart, it's a love story, isn't it? So there's definitely like unrequited love, obsession. There is lots of drama, and I was here for it. I was eating up the drama. But basically, this is narrated by one of the people who were on the island at the time of the murder. They're all supposed friends, but they're keeping secrets from each other, and there's infidelities, and there's all kinds of drama in their relationships. They bring that all onto the island, and everything just kind of implodes. I don't want to say too much about this. It's definitely a fun read. I think like the narrator, he's a very unreliable narrator. He kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit as he talks to the reader. He also will tell things non-linear. Why can't I say that word? Kind of out of order. And also he will tell you something that happened, and then he'll say, actually, that was a lie. Here's what really happened. It's an interesting way of telling the story, but what I find so different about this book versus Alex Michaelides' first two books is the fact that it is not there's not like this huge twist. There's not like these huge shocking moments. It's more convoluted than it is twisty, if that makes sense. It's not the experience where you get to the end of the book and it has a great payoff. The journey of reading the book is the part that's the most exciting, in my opinion. I love Alex Michaelides' writing. There's something very beautiful and almost poetic about it, so I really enjoyed the journey of this, and I was very entertained, and the drama was very entertaining, but there wasn't necessarily this twist at the end that was like a real payoff, and it was somewhat predictable, but again, I was entertained. I had a good time. I gave it 4 stars. The next prompt was purple on the cover, and I read The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon for this. I loved this, you guys. I loved this so much. This takes place in such an interesting world. We have aethermancers, people who are able to pull from different dimensions different kinds of power. And I just thought the whole world and setup was really cool. They have airships powered by aether hearts, or aether crystals, I think. And we're following our two main characters. Alaric is the son of this evil emperor who is trying to take over the whole continent through the Hurricane Wars. Tamsin is part of a group of people who's trying to resist this empire. The Hurricane Wars have been going on for so long. War is really all they know. And she has this very powerful light magic, which is very rare, and he has this very powerful shadow magic. Are fighting in this war, and they meet on the battlefield and they clash. They realize that when their magic comes together, when their magic merges, it does something really unusual and really interesting. And because of the way their magic comes together, they now have to come together and work together to save the empire from a bigger threat than the Hurricane Wars. I don't want to say too much else about it than that, because one of the most exciting things isn't even mentioned in the synopsis that happens between them, so I don't want to go into it too much, but I loved this. I loved this, and it wasn't just the world building, it wasn't just the writing, although the writing was fine, it wasn't exceptional. It was the characters. It was Alaric and Tamsin. Hi, editing Laura here. I keep calling the main female character Tamsin. Her name's not Tamsin, it's Taliesin. Okay, I don't know where I got Tamsin from. I apologize. So every time I say Tamsin, it's wrong. Her name's Taliesin. Okay, goodbye. And their dynamic together, every time they work together, like so combative. They were so at each other's throats, back and forth, but you can tell that they're slowly starting to develop an attraction to each other, maybe something more than attraction for each other, but they're fighting against that because they are literal enemies, okay? Him and his people have killed her friends, her loved ones in these wars. She has so much reason to hate this man and to want him dead, and she represents to him everything that went wrong with his family, his empire from when he was at a young age. He is trying to alert her to the fact that she doesn't know the full history of her people and everything that happened and everything that they did to start these wars, that it wasn't just his people. So there's that going on as well. This was just so much fun. This was so much fun, and I got to the end of this book and I gasped. And it wasn't because it ended on like a ridiculous cliffhanger, it was because it just ended. And I'm like, I need more. I need more of these two. They are so good together. Oh my God, I loved them. Like nothing else matters. Nothing else matters to me. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I'm very excited that the next book in the series comes out later this year, because honestly, I wouldn't have been able to wait any longer than that. I forget when it comes out. I think it's like November or December, I'm not sure. But I'm gonna be picking that up immediately because I need to know what happens next with Alaric and Tasman. Okay, then we had my side quest prompt, which was to vlog for the entire month. Obviously, I did not do that, so I didn't earn a book token for this. I'll get into it in another video at some point, but I was just having a rough time with YouTube this month. So after I posted that first vlog of the month, I was like, you know what? I started filming another vlog, and then I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. So I kind of gave up on that, but that's okay. My mental health was more important than vlogging for the entire month. Then the next prompt was to steal a book from someone else's TBR, and I went with Daughter of the Blood by Anne Bishop, which was the Black Hat Book Coven pick for August, or for July. This is officially my worst book of the year. I gave this 1 star. This is my first 1 star of the year. This was also my 100th book of the year, and it got 1 star, which is very sad. I don't even know how to explain this book to you because it is so fucking convoluted. There's so much that doesn't make sense. Was there a fucking plot? I have no idea. But the most egregious thing about this book is that there's a character in here named Damon. The whole thing revolves around this very young girl who is apparently witch with a capital W. She's like the fulfillment of a prophecy where there's going to be this amazing all-powerful queen who's going to take over and right the wrongs, right? So she is that prophesized queen, but at the beginning of this story she's 7. Okay, and at the end of this story she's 12. And Damon, when he finds out that this witch is in the world, he is like ready to dedicate his life to this queen, right? But when he finds out that she's 12 years old, he's like, oh shit, she's a child. But he still has feelings for her. It is the most disgusting thing that I've ever read, honestly. I have no idea why anyone would think that this is okay. I'm so sorry if you liked this book, I really am, but it did not work for me, mostly because of that. That gave me the ick, the biggest ick, and I could not get over it. I could not get over it. I gave it 1 star. Besides this book just being overly confusing, overly convoluted for no fucking reason, I didn't like it. It wasn't good. 1 star. I'm sure the live show for this is tonight, the night that I'm filming this, so it should be up by the time you're seeing this video. So if you want to check out the live show and hear my full thoughts, you can do that. But yeah, this was horrible, and I cannot wait to get this off my shelf. Okay, then we have the first of my TBR pop picks, which actually went really good this month. The first one was Paladin's Faith by T. Kingfisher. This is the 4th book in the Saint of Steel series. I thought that perhaps it was the last one in the Saint of Steel series, but the way this ended makes me think that she's planning to write more in this series, but I haven't heard anything. I haven't really looked into it. So if you know anything, let me know. But this one I did talk about in that first vlog of the month. I gave it 4 stars, maybe 4.5. If you want to hear my full thoughts, you can check out the last vlog that I did, which I think was called like Romance and Fireworks or something. So you can check that out if you want to know my full thoughts, but I did really enjoy it. Then we had a backlist book. For that, I read Set on You by Amy Lee. This is a romance. I actually ended up really enjoying this to the point where this sent me on an Amy Lee binge. So I'll talk about those two books as well. But I gave this one 4 stars. I did talk about it in that vlog, so you can check out that vlog for my full thoughts. I read the other 2 books in the series that are out. So after Set on You, the second book is X's and O's by Amy Lee, and this follows the sister of the main character in the first book, who is a bookstagrammer. She ends up moving in with a roommate named Trevor, who is also a firefighter and a friend of the main male character in the first book, who is very much against love and like seems to have a different girl over every night. Our main character, Tara, decides that she wants to have a second chance romance, so she starts revisiting all of her previous exes and trying to meet up with them and hopefully get her happily ever after, all while her roommate Trevor is like watching all of this happen and like helping her out with it, and through that they end up falling for each other. It was really cute. I really liked it. I just really like the way Amy Lee writes. I think that she does a really good job of balancing the steam with the actual romance of it all. You can see these people actually falling in love. You can feel their chemistry, and that's what I really enjoy. I feel like each of her characters were very unique. They stood out, and they also had very prominent flaws. You could see their flaws, but there was like a moment in here where, because she is like so romantic and Trevor is so not romantic, where he, like, if you've read this book, the shoebox at the end of this made me cry. The shoebox at the end of this made me cry. And then the epilogue happened. The epilogue made me cry because of the way he did that. Oh my god. I loved it. I loved it. This one also got 4 stars. Then I read the third book, which was The Catch. This one follows a fashion influencer. Is supposed to go to this fancy spa resort and like post about it on her socials, so she's getting the opportunity to go there for free. But there ends up being some kind of mix-up when she goes, and she goes a week earlier than they had her down for. So instead of leaving and going, like flying back and then having to fly back, she ends up going to this little bed and breakfast, and she meets grumpy lobster fisherman Evan, who him and his sister kind of run the bed and breakfast, and immediately they do not get along, like immediately. There ends up having to be like a fake dating plot. He like takes her out on a boat and he goes overboard. He has to be taken to the hospital, and she doesn't want to like leave him, so she tells them, hey, I'm his fiance. And then when his family comes and hears that his fiance is with him, they're like, his fiance, he's engaged. And so it becomes a whole thing. The family were having some issues, and like this kind of brought them together, so they decided to just fake date. And it was fun. It was funny. I feel like this one was the most steamy out of the 3, but it was also very romantic, and the way they fell for each other was so beautiful, and the way our main character worked through some of her issues. I like getting to see characters in romance novels work through their bigger issues with or without the other person, or realizing that they do have that other person to lean on, which was a big theme in the first book as well. Yeah, I don't know. I just really like these. They all got 4 stars for me. If she continues writing in this series, I'll definitely continue reading in the series, or whatever else she comes out with, honestly. Okay, so that was the little the little binge that I went on. Then getting back to the prompts for July, the next book was a book blurbed by a favorite author, and for that one I read A Shot in the Dark by Victoria Lee, because it was blurbed up here by Ashley Poston, who is one of my favorite authors. This is another one that I did discuss in that vlog, so if you want to hear my full thoughts, you can check out that vlog. Did I give it 3 stars? Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. My second TBR pop pick was Anatomy: A Love Story by Dana Schwartz. Is another one that I read in that vlog, so if you want to hear my full thoughts, check out the vlog. But I gave this 3 stars. Really more of like a 2.5, 2.75. Didn't really enjoy this one. Didn't do much for me. I have since unhauled it already and sold it, so I don't have it to hold up for you. Next, for male protagonist, I was gonna read The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. Unfortunately, this ended up being a soft DNF. I got 171 pages into it. So I am right here, almost halfway, maybe like 40% of the way. I'm not as compelled as I was with the Expanse series. I think it was just my mood. I don't think I was quite in the mood for sci-fi. I haven't been in the mood for sci-fi like all year, to be honest with you. Sci-fi for some reason is just not working for me, and I think it was my mood. There was a lot that I was enjoying about this. There was a lot that was like scaring me about this. This takes place on a planet called Anjin? Yeah, Anjin, which is home to humanity as well as another species that kind of lives under the planet. And humans don't really know how they ended up there or what their history is, but one day they're invaded by an alien race called the Kariks. They come, they kill 1/8 of the humans, and then they take them somewhere else and force them to work for them. That is pretty much all I know, because even though I was 171 pages in, that's pretty much all that had happened so far. But the way that it happened was very harrowing, and it was kind of a lot to read. And like I said, I was enjoying it, but I just wasn't in it, and I wasn't really compelled, and like it was just all sadness and grief in the beginning of this, and I think I just couldn't do it at the time. But it did still earn me a book token, because if I get at least 100 pages in, I can count a DNF as a completed prompt. So I got my book token for it, but I do still want to finish it. I don't know that I'm gonna finish it in August, but I might try. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm disappointed that like I couldn't get into it right away like I did with The Expanse. The other side quest prompt I got for July was to do a 24-hour readathon, and obviously I didn't do that either. I'm gonna try to roll this over into August, but I don't know that I'll be able to do it in August, especially because it'll be back to school time. But I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna hold on to this for August and see if I can do a 24-hour readathon in August. If not, it's fine. Okay, next we had a nonfiction pick, and I was supposed to read The Book of Help. I didn't get to it. Honestly, I don't know when I'm gonna get to this book. I've had it on my shelf for so long, and I've put it on several TBRs, and I just never get around to reading it. So I'm gonna have to find a way to put it onto the TBR again, or just read it, honestly, at this point. But I unfortunately did not get to that. My last TBR pop pick was for We Shall Be Monsters, I think it was called, and I didn't get around to reading that. I never got a copy of it, completely forgot about it. Reread a favorite, which I did with The Deadly Education, gave that 4 stars. And author who writes in multiple genres. Such a disappointment. So I chose Untamed Shores by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this is the first time I've ever given a Silvia Moreno Garcia 2 stars. But I gave it 2 stars. I just did not enjoy this. It's personal preference is what it is. I still enjoy her writing, but I just feel like this didn't do anything. This is more noir, and I find personally that her noir fiction is not something that I enjoy. Like Certain Dark Things, I thought it was good, but I didn't really love it. I gave it 3 stars. The only one that really worked for me was Velvet Was the Night, because Velvet Was the Night is definitely more crime noir, and I actually really liked that one. I gave it 4 stars. So it was definitely an outlier, but this was, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. In this, we are following Viridiana, who lives in Baja California. This takes place in 1979. She ends up getting a job with these Americans who know very little Spanish, so they use her as like to help them translate, but also she is there to be basically an assistant slash secretary for the man of the house. She immediately becomes entwined with them. It is this older man, his younger wife, and her brother, and a relationship forms between Viridiana and the guy. I don't even remember his name. It doesn't matter. So she quickly becomes quite embroiled with this family, and then someone dies, and she ends up lying to protect her new friends. Things kind of go from there. It's one of those stories, like most of Sylvia's stories, that the story itself doesn't really come together until the very end of the book. So the whole time you're reading it and you don't know where it's going or what it's leading up to or what's going to happen until you get to the end, and then you can kind of piece it all together at the end. I usually like that about some of these stories, but this one I didn't, because I was bored out of my mind throughout the entire book until things started to pick up at the very end, and then the very end wasn't worth what I went through. Like, the payoff wasn't worth how boring the rest of the book was to me. I didn't care about these characters. I didn't connect to them. I didn't feel anything for them whatsoever. And no, I'm a character-driven reader, so not being able to hold on to the characters made this extremely hard for me to read. It was just, I didn't care. So it got 2 stars, and I'm so sad. Not one of my favorites, Silvia Moreno Garcia's. I kind of just want to keep this book though, because I love this cover. I love the cover so much, and I want it to be with all of my other Silvia Moreno Garcia books. And then the last prompt that I got was a book with dragons, and I decided to read Servant Mage by Kate Elliott, and this is another one that I really did not like. Does it have dragons in it? Maybe, subtly. But don't go into this book expecting dragons. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't like it. It takes place in this world. There was royalty, and then the royalty got overthrown, and so now there are the, what do they call them? The liberationists and the royalists, and they've kind of been in this battle. Royalists, I guess, the people who are loyal to the crown, are very few now, and they are pretty much deemed the rebellion. This new government has kind of enslaved mages. So our main character, Thelian, is a low-level mage, but she then gets recruited by a group of rebels. Oh, they're called monarchists. A group of rebel monarchists come and free her from her indentured servitude and ask her to do a job for them. And along the way, she is confronted with a completely different world than she thought she knew. She's now realizing that there are 2 sides to every story, and that maybe what she learned and what she was brought up with is not exactly the truth. So it's one of those stories. It's very short, and I feel like this did absolutely nothing. It did absolutely nothing. We get to the end of the book, and it's like, yeah, she learned all these things, but what did she do with that knowledge? Not much. And obviously both sides have their issues, right? It didn't really do much for the wider world. We're following this very isolated story with this one character who's coming to terms with what the world really looks like, and seeing these 2 different perspectives from the liberationists and the monarchists, but nothing actually gets resolved. It's just a short little story set amongst this world and this war, but we're not really that involved in it. I didn't like the main character yet again, and didn't really click with any of the characters, to be honest with you. So this did absolutely nothing for me, and I gave it 2 stars, unfortunately. Okay, and that was everything I read for the prompts for the board game, but I did read some other things this month. Yes, I did. I read the 2nd and 3rd book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams, The Bitter Twins and The Poison Song. I gave both of them 4 stars. The Bitter Twins, loved it. 3rd book, The Poison Song, lost me a bit in the middle, brought me back around again, and then completely devastated me at the end of the book. Jen Williams is an author who is not afraid to kill off her characters, and that, like, it hit me. It hit me in the heart, because this was my favorite character. It was devastating, but still not 5 stars. This was a 4-star series for me, but I will definitely read from Jen Williams in the future, because the Winnowing Flame trilogy was really good, and it is that perfect blend of sci-fi and fantasy that I really like. I loved the dragons, the war beasts in this, but yeah, I had a good time with it. I'm glad that I finished out the trilogy. I then read Late Bloomer by Maisie Eddings, which was a book that was on my summer TBR, so I'm trying to work through some of the books off of my summer TBR. This is a romance, a sapphic romance, following Opal and Pepper. Opal is listen, I connected to these characters so much, because so much of me, like my personality, were in both of these characters. It was ridiculous. Opal is bi. She is a disaster bisexual. She is neurodivergent, like me. She lets everyone walk all over her, like me. Like, she is such a good person, and people use that. People use her because she always says yes. She's always ready to help people. She's always putting everyone else above herself. And I felt that. And when you see it in someone else, like, it was so frustrating to read, because it's like, I know that I do this, but when you see someone else do it, you're like, wow, that is, come on, you're pathetic. Don't do that. Don't let people walk all over you. And it's like the same decisions I would make. But anyway, Opal ends up winning the lottery. Like, not a huge amount of money, but I think it was like 500,000, like $500,000. She impulsively decides to buy a flower farm in Asheville and move there, and so she does that. But when she gets to the flower farm, she sees Pepper there, and Pepper is like, what do you mean you bought this farm? This is my home, this is where I live. No, you didn't. That becomes a problem, but they end up trying to work it out. They end up living together for a while, and feelings ensue. It's beautiful. Pepper is, I don't think she necessarily labels herself, because she doesn't really like labeling herself, but she is interested in all kinds of people and genders. She is also autistic, and the way she kind of processed certain things were so similar to the way I do, and some of the sensory issues that she had were sensory issues that I have, and I just, like, I connected to both of these characters so much. Like, the two of them made up who I am to a T. It's also very grumpy sunshine. Pepper is very grumpy, very pessimistic, and Opal is full of sunshine and positivity, even though life has really dragged her down, but she doesn't let it. Like, she has been through a lot. Like, she has a past of alcoholism, of nicotine addiction, drugs, trying to chase this empty feeling inside her through substances and sex, which is also something that I heavily related to, because that is something that I did in my younger years. But now she's just in this place where she is so positive and so beautiful and brings so much light to every situation that she's in. I thought that Opal and Pepper were perfect for each other. You could feel their chemistry. I thought it was really beautiful. I gave it 4 stars. The only reason this didn't get 5 stars is because I really expected this to be more atmospheric and like cottagecore, especially with it taking place on a flower farm, and it wasn't quite that. We do have the flower farm as a backdrop, but it wasn't really the atmosphere. Does that make sense? So I gave it 4 stars. I will definitely read more from this author in the future. She's hilarious, like the way she writes. And then lastly, I went on another binge. I recently heard someone talking about Broken Bonds by Jay Bree. I think it might have been Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy. And I noticed that it was like the whole series was available through Hoopla. So I started reading it. I read the first book and immediately was turned off and almost DNF'd it, but I kept going, and I'm glad that I kept going because I ended up really enjoying it. Like, all of these books, I read Broken Bonds, the first one, the second one, which is Savage Bonds, and the third one, which is Blood Bonds. It takes place in this world where people have bonds, they have gifts. When you're a certain age, you put your blood, your DNA through a registry, and you find people who are bonded to you. Like, they are the perfect match for you, essentially. And when you bond with these people, your powers grow and their powers grow. So our main character has 5 bonds, but she has spent the past 5 years on the run for reasons until she is found and dragged back to her bonds, and that's where we pick up the story. It's basically a like why choose reverse harem type story, but there's so much else going on. There is a very strong plot. There's a resistance that's like fighting against them, so we have this constant war, this constant struggle, this constant danger, while also being like really sexy. Her trying not to bond with these men but being ridiculously attracted to them, and it being like ridiculously sexy and hot. And every book ends with a ridiculous cliffhanger that makes you want to immediately go into the second one, which is why I read 3 of the books like within 3 days. You know what I mean? They're just addictive. They're not good. Like, the writing isn't good. The dialogue is sometimes cringy. The plot may have some like, it's not good, but it's addicting. And I have to know what happens next. Because like I said, every book ends in a ridiculous cliffhanger. So I have to continue. I have to keep reading. I've already picked up the 4th book, so I will probably be finishing out this series in the month of August. It is definitely romantasy, and it's more romance than fantasy, I feel. But it does have a very strong plot, and it's not just smut. So It does have some things going for it. If you're interested, I definitely recommend. All of the books that I read in the series got 3 stars so far, maybe more like a 3.5, and I'm really enjoying myself. I just can't rate them higher than that because the writing's so bad. And that is everything. Is that everything? That's everything that I read in the month of July, as well as how my game went for me in the month of July as well. Talk to me down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. How was your reading in July? I am very excited for August and to see how much I read and what I read and how it goes. I'm excited for school to start up again so I can have more time for reading. I think August is going to be a good month. We are slowly creeping our way towards autumn, and I cannot wait. If you don't have anything to say but you want to let me know you were here, you can leave me some kind of weapon emoji, maybe a knife, maybe a sword, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!